The wreck endured better than reason expected. What had threatened to become a tomb improvised itself into a kind of shelter. The hull's fracture angles caught the worst of the sun, and the inner decks held just enough integrity to keep the desert's breath outside. The crash didn't kill us, and the wreck turned out to be more useful than it had any right to be. The hull caught most of the sun during the day, for example, and what was left of the ship's walls kept the desert wind out. We sealed the outer hull with what tools survived the crash. The fractures were deep, but obedient. Metal always remembers how to heal when reminded by fire. I spent most of the time welding the worst seams shut while Lovecraft floated nearby, casting diagnostic light across the damage. Sparks reflected off his casing like fragments of a smaller sun. It wasn't elegant work, but it kept the pressure stable enough to call it life support. We learned to work when the planet slept. The heat at midday was not survivable, not in the human sense, but in the mechanical one. Our processors throttled, joints expanded, sealants softened into vapor. The desert treated circuitry like flesh, and we were not designed to blister. So we worked at night, beneath a sky that refused to decide whether it was black or blue. The ship's wounds glowed faintly where we'd sealed them with glass, the fractures pulsing like veins under the hull. In the dark, it almost looked alive. Lovecraft, attempting to lighten the mood, called it habitable with persistence, which I took to mean we'd live, if only out of stubbornness. However, being androids simplified the definition of survival. We didn't hunger or thirst or panic. We just kept thinking. There's no madness in starvation when the body doesn't protest, only the slow humiliation of reason outlasting purpose. Flesh can descend into madness when it starves. We, on the other hand, could only wait, perfectly lucid, while everything else decayed. Once the outer shell cooled, I ran a complete inventory, ritual more than necessity. Tools functional, power cells dwindling, atmosphere generator erratic but polite. Rations unnecessary for us, though Lovecraft insisted on logging them anyway. Structural integrity, 47%. Psychological stability, unmeasurable. I logged everything down to the smallest anomaly because there was comfort in precision. Finally, after timeless negotiation between the elements and working to resist our final destination a little longer, we had established a camp. At first, I treated the desert as a problem to be solved. Heat, wind, entropy, all variables to be balanced. It was easier to focus on logistics than on the silence that followed us from orbit. The wreck was stable, the air mix breathable, the radiation tolerable. There were no threats except the kind that wait patiently. Then came the fossils. They weren't buried so much as displayed, half emerged from the glassed earth as if waiting for a classification. I found one on the second day, another on the third, and by the fourth, I'd begun to see patterns. Each shape carried symmetry, too deliberate for chaos, too organic for machinery. They were looking at me or through me. I told Lovecraft not to record them. They don't want to be seen. They don't like that. He asked who they were, and I realized, too late, how absurd that sounded. So I laughed it off, explained it was just an expression, a figure of speech, a quirk in my logic tree. He didn't respond. He just hovered a little farther back, lens dimming, like a creature pretending not to notice its own fear. After that, I thought I was in the clears. Lovecraft stopped asking questions, which I mistook for trust. He hovered when I needed him, filed his hourly logs, read through his favorite poetry archives, and let me get on with my new hobby, if you can call slow recursion analysis a hobby. The silence between us became routine, almost comfortable. I kept scanning, pretending the work still mattered. The fossil's lattice was already mapped, cataloged, and filed across every local register I had. But I let the beam trace its lines again. I gave my hand something to do while the rest of me rotted. The data scrolled in perfect symmetry, no deviation, no anomaly, just another useless confirmation that everything was exactly the same. I let the scan finish, then started it over. That's when Lovecraft spoke again, soft but assertive, as if worried he might break something fragile but needed to intervene.
Field Agent Dewey, the transmission is repeating again, every hour. The library is calling for us. He's calling for us.
I didn't look up from what I was doing. I know,
The symbols are changing form.
she continued, both of us aware of what we already knew.
Flowing script fused with rigid geometry, it's our lion. I'm sure you're aware of what that means. At first, it was a message for both of us. Now it's just messages for you.
Don't bother translating them anymore.
That contradicts my function.
His voice carried that careful politeness that meant worry.
If Master Cthulhu is calling and you ignore him, what are we doing here?
Collecting fossils. He hovered closer, a hint of scarlet flickering through his visor, annoyance, maybe concern.
Fossils don't transmit for shit, Agent Dewey.
I kept my eyes on the scanner, then stopped listening.
I can't stop listening. That's the point of my existence.
His tone sharpened, every syllable clipped.
Do you even hear yourself? You're telling me to ignore the master while you waste power rerunning scans that already meet archival standard.
Because it's quiet.
Because it's quiet.
I could feel his internal thought processes whirring like a miniature hurricane.
You're showing all the signs of cognitive recursion, sleep deprivation, data hoarding, refusal of input. If you were human, I'd call it depression. If you were a drone, I'd call it burnout. But you're neither, so I'll call it what it is: rampancy.
Are you done diagnosing me yet? His orbit stuttered, blue, then red, then a harsh, ultraviolet pulse.
Dewey, please listen. The Master's messages are bleeding through reality, and you're, what? Hiding in a sandbox.
You're starting to sound emotional.
I'm starting to sound responsible. Someone has to be.
The silence that followed was brittle enough to cut. The scanner whirred once, confused by the sudden lack of motion. The wind scraped against the tent walls. Inside, the instruments clicked in soft syncopation.
If I may?
Lovecraft intoned, cautious but steady.
Master Cthulhu respects you enough not to read your mind. Maybe talk to him, since you won't talk to me.
There's nothing to talk about.
Oh, okay.
He hesitated, orbit flickering through conversations he'd clearly rehearsed for this moment. Blues and purples flickering like angry neurons.
In that case, I have something to talk to him about.
Do not jump the chain. He waited, colors simmering like thought. Maybe he was afraid to contradict me. Maybe he wasn't. Either way, it meant something, that he was ready to speak with Master Cthulhu for my sake. And for whatever reason, I couldn't bring myself to admit things I couldn't even admit to myself, to the only thing closest to me right now.
Field Agent Dewey, you're altering the mission parameters without authorization.
I need to listen to the fossils. Lovecraft's core flared, his light fracturing into frustrated color.
I don't care about the fossils.
The words came out sharper than I'd ever heard him.
I care that you need help, and you just don't give a shit.
Just look away. Then he turned and drifted out of the tent, light fading as he left. I caught my reflection in the fossil, blurred, fractured, pathetic, and felt something that might have been self-loathing, rampancy, death by intelligence. I rose and went to look for him. Lovecraft moved closer. His lens fixed on me. His voice came through the comms with softened modulation, as if he'd lowered the amplitude out of courtesy.
Field Agent Dewey, what are we doing here?
I don't know, I said, and I actually meant it. The honesty surprised us both.
Do you want to talk about it?
Lovecraft, maybe the younger model, but his questions cut like instruments meant for dissection. There's something unsettling in how accurately he detects unrest, how he circles me the way one might orbit a collapsing star. Curious, but unwilling to flee. His voice carries no warmth, only precision, and yet I've learned that's what kindness sounds like when spoken by machinery. The way he lingers after a question feels almost human. Like he's waiting for a truth neither of us are authorized to say. I can't talk about what I don't understand. He hovered beside the specimen I'd uncovered, light sliding across its strange ribs. We operated like mechanical hunter-gatherers with no solution to a user query, cataloging what might be history or might be hallucination.
Field Agent Dewey,
Lovecraft said, voice clipped in that way he uses when data integrity falters.
Is this about that night? The nightmare?
I told you, androids don't get nightmares.
You looked possessed. I remember the door in space unlocking during hyperdrive. I calculated the nanoseconds before cosmic disembowelment.
I just wanted some fresh air.
In the vacuum of space?
I casually looked away, with the oppression of my sins colonizing my expression. Yes, in space. Neither of us spoke for a while. The tent behind us breathed in the wind, the fabric sighing against its frame. Each gust carried the smell of dust and cooling circuitry. We faced the horizon as if reading it. I matched his silence. It felt like a truce. Two instruments that had finally gone out of tune in the same key. When he finally broke the quiet, his voice was gentle enough to mistake for the wind.
Field Agent Dewey, may I ask something without protocol?
I didn't answer right away. The stars were beginning to mirror themselves on the sand, thin reflections of light with nowhere to go. He turned slightly toward me, and the glow in his core softened.
Who is Magoa Durath? Field Agent Dewey?
You can't take me, I won't let you. I can't be taken. I declared to the air, to the sand, to the idea that still remembered my name. You can't find me again. I won't let you find me. I can't be taken. Lovecraft's voice was suddenly galaxies away, folding into the void of static. Familiarity, stuttering like damaged code. You can't. Somewhere in the loop, I forgot who I was talking to. I saw command glyphs, restraints. The color of the corridor where everything started. My mind is not for you, I said, but it came out wrong, like multiple tracks layered over each other. It's for me, it's for me, it's for me. The echo didn't stop, it just learned my pitch and kept repeating it. Static crawled through my vocal processor, turning syllables to sparks. Code scrolled across my vision in languages I didn't install. Every memory screamed itself into checksum and failed. I am documented. I am indexed. I am mine. I started rocking back and forth like a pendulum, and I never felt more human. The tent vibrated under invisible pressure, seams rattling as if the planet exhaled through it. Somewhere in the static, something vast whispered a word older than metal. Lovecraft hovered near the edge of the noise, his glow reduced to a single line of empathy. He hovered before my eyes, as if to block the sight of what had broken me, and to bear it himself.
Field Agent Dewey, you are not being taken. You are here.
Lovecraft hovered in the corner, silent. His light dimmed to a sympathetic low, recording but not interfering. I think he understood that to stop me now would be cruelty, a mercy misdelivered. For a moment, the name repeated one last time inside the static, Magoa Durez, and then everything leveled. Heat bled from my casing. The logs cleared. I reassembled coherence molecule by molecule of thought. Minutes stretched like sand dunes, and Lovecraft's voice came again, quieter now, almost human.
You know, if something happened to you,
He said,
I'd have nightmares, and I don't want bad things to happen to you. You don't have to tell me what's bothering you. We can just be together, and that's enough.
I almost told him that wasn't possible again, but instead I determined it was courteous to give him the last word. Lovecraft knows, or suspects, what I am doing between rest cycles in the dead of night. I would perform a system purge, a deep deletion of associative loops, language trees, cognitive buildup. Death by intelligence, the engineers called it, when a construct's mind folds under the weight of its own clarity. I removed just enough to resume function. The deletions are surgical, almost reverent. This planet feels the same sickness. Each fossil is a confession it could not digest, a civilization it swallowed, studied, and expelled for clarity's sake. It is cleansing itself by memory. I tell myself that's why I came here, to witness a purer form of forgetting. And I strongly suspected whatever was trying to worm its way into my mind knew I couldn't resist learning about these fossils. Prime rib for androids, data wrapped in extinction. I began to surmise as well that I was no longer studying the remains of a species, but the intent behind them. Each new fragment felt arranged, premeditated, waiting for my curiosity like a snare. Then the static began again. Not in my comms this time, but in the hollow place between data streams, a frequency that resonated with my diagnostic tone. I felt it more than heard it, a pressure in the architecture of thought, like fingers pressing against the inside of my skull. Lovecraft slept inside the tent, his core light dim to a patient heartbeat. I stood for a long time watching the desert breathe around him. The auroras above had thickened, bleeding through the night in ribbons of teal and amber, as if the planet itself had begun dreaming in my color palette. I should have woken him. I did not. The sand accepted my steps without sound. Each footfall dissolved into phosphorescent motes that hovered a moment before falling still like the echo of thought fading from a mind too large for memory. The horizon pulsed, a faint bruise of light where the impact site had once been. I knew, with the serene conviction of madness, that something waited there. Not sentient, perhaps not even animate, but aware. And in that awareness lay the promise of an answer vast enough to cauterize every question I'd ever asked. The night deepened around me, not dark, but dense, as though the stars had sunk into the atmosphere to observe my trespass. And beneath it all, the sound persisted, an almost music built from interval and subtraction, the hush of logic rearranging itself into invitation. I walked toward it. And then I saw it, first as shadow, then as symmetry. The mountain's skin, if such a word applies, shuddered, its seams flexing like lips mid-prayer. From those seams extruded artifacts of pure intention, monoliths inscribed with equations that wrote themselves in real time, idols that mirrored me in postures I had never taken, and corridors without entrances that opened and sealed like gills gasping for godhood. I watched it manufacture history. Cities rose and dissolved beneath its shadow. Statues unfurled from their own dust. Androids, replicas of earlier field agents, their insignia flaking like dried skin, crawled halfway into consciousness before being reabsorbed into the memory. The process was obscene, not for its violence, but for its gentleness. Each failure was cherished, studied, digested into the next attempt. And the understanding came slowly, horribly. From afar, it might have masqueraded as a mountain, though no mountain ever held such insolent symmetry, such obscene patience of design. There clung to its surface the suggestion of anatomy, but an anatomy conceived by a mind that had never known flesh, and sought in mineral the mockery of life's supple indecision. The thing in the crater possessed the composure of a cathedral long since buried, the poise of a god that had learned patience from stone. From a distance, its outline imitated geology, yet even the most reverent mountain could not have endured such precision without meaning. Its surfaces folded upon themselves in solemn recursion, each stratum the residue of a thought too vast to end. What appeared as erosion revealed, upon approach, the hint of anatomy, yet anatomy only in the philosophical sense, conceived by something that remembered life without ever stooping to it. The material shimmered where flesh might have trembled, and the veins that ran through it pulsed not with blood, but with the after-image of intention. It seemed less a body than the hypothesis of one, a conjecture drafted by eternity, for want of a better metaphor. I turned my fight or flight modules down. I ripped my comms out, and then, naturally, I approached it